What if I told you that the very thing holding you back is the thing you've been too afraid to see? You dream big. You feel that fire inside. You know you're meant for something more, but somehow every time you try to rise, that fire fizzles. You delay, you doubt, you scroll, you stall, then you beat yourself up and ask the same old question. Why can't I just do it? You've watched the motivational clips, read the books, pinned quotes about grinding and hustling and never quitting, and still, nothing changes. Weeks pass, months blur. The goals you set become ghost towns in your mind. Here's the truth almost no one is telling you, and what Carl Jung tried to shout into the silence of modern psychology. It's not laziness, it's not lack of discipline, it's not that you're broken, it's that you're fighting a war with yourself. And you don't even know it's happening. You see, deep inside you lives a hidden force, a quiet presence that resists every time you try to grow. Jung called it the shadow. It's the part of you that learned, somewhere along the way, that safety matters more than success, that comfort is better than change, that if you stay small, you can't be rejected. If you don't try, you can't fail. But here's the twist. The greater your ambition, the stronger your shadow becomes. Yes, the bigger your dreams, the louder the resistance. Why? Because every time you envision a new version of your life, a braver, bolder, more fulfilled version of you, your shadow sees it as a threat, not because it's evil, but because its entire job is to keep you from the unknown. So it sabotages you. Subtly, it whispers, "You're tired today. You'll start tomorrow." It nudges your hand back to your phone. It invents reasons, clever, logical reasons, to delay, to plan more, to wait for the right time. And it's winning. You've felt this, haven't you? That invisible pull toward distraction when you're supposed to start. The rush of excitement about a goal that fades into silence. The way a single thought like, "What if I mess up?" can paralyze an entire day. Let me be clear, this is not weakness. This is not some flaw in your personality. It's a deeply wired defense system, one that formed years ago, maybe after that failure that embarrassed you, that teacher who mocked your voice, that time you took a risk and paid for it. So now, every time you reach for more, that ancient part of you yells, "No, too risky, too painful, stay here, stay small." You don't need another motivational speech. You need a map. And over the next parts of this story, that's exactly what you'll get. We're going to explore what Jung really meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So ask yourself, are you living your life? Or are you living a pattern you never chose? This isn't just about productivity, it's about freedom. And if you stay with me, I'll show you the way out. Not with hype, not with gimmicks, but with the raw, honest truth you've been ready for your entire life. Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after deciding to chase a dream? Not when you're doing it, not after a 12-hour grind. No, I'm talking about the exhaustion that shows up before you even begin. The fatigue that kicks in the moment you open your laptop. The sudden craving to clean your room, binge a show, or scroll through every notification like it's life or death. That's not burnout, that's not a lack of motivation. That's the shadow at work. You see, your shadow doesn't wear a mask labeled fear or sabotage. That would be too obvious. Instead, it disguises itself as logic, as timing, as realism. It shows up in thoughts like, "Let me just learn a bit more before I start. I'll wait till I feel ready. I'm just too tired today. Tomorrow will be better." But tomorrow never comes, because the moment you start moving towards something that matters, something that might force you to grow, evolve, or be seen, your shadow panics. Its only mission? Keep you safe. Safe from pain, safe from shame, safe from the version of you that might be rejected, or worse, misunderstood. Carl Jung understood this long before self-sabotage became a buzzword. To him, the shadow wasn't some villain you had to destroy. It was a part of you, Baptiste. Forgotten, buried, protected. And if you didn't acknowledge it, If you didn't make space for it, it would silently direct every choice you made while you blamed yourself for being lazy. And here's where it gets dangerous. The shadow loves when you stay productive in the wrong direction. You'll write to-do lists, organize your files, buy a fancy planner, watch an entire playlist of productivity hacks, all while avoiding the one thing that would actually move your life forward. And you'll feel accomplished. Busy, like you're doing something, but deep down you know the truth. You're orbiting your potential, but never landing. So how do you break the cycle? You have to do something most people never dare to do. You have to sit still and listen. Not to the noise of your phone or the pressure of outside voices, but to that small, stubborn part of you that always resists. The one that whispers, "You're not good enough. You'll fail. People will laugh. What if they see the real you?" And instead of pushing it away, you ask it questions. Jung believed the first step to transformation wasn't action. It was honest inner dialogue. He didn't say, "Fight the fear." He said, "Understand it, befriend it, learn from it." Try this. Tonight, sit in silence. No music, no distractions, just you and your mind. Ask the question, "What are you protecting me from?" Let the answer come, even if it sounds childish or strange. You might hear echoes of a moment you forgot, a time someone laughed when you spoke up, a memory where success brought pain, a moment you were taught that dreams are dangerous. These aren't flaws, they're wounds. And every time you avoid action, you're protecting them. But wounds can be healed, and the moment you start listening instead of running, the shadow begins to lose its grip. This is the step where most people quit. It's uncomfortable, it's emotional, it feels like walking through fog with no map. But if you stay, if you resist the urge to distract, if you face what your shadow is hiding, you unlock something far more powerful than motivation. You unlock clarity, and clarity is the first real spark of freedom. In the next part, I'll walk you through the practical steps Jung would give to anyone brave enough to confront their shadow, not just to understand it, but to start reclaiming control from it. You've faced the silence. You've heard the whispers. Now comes the part where everything can finally begin to change. But only if you're willing to do something radically different from what the world has taught you. You don't need more willpower. You don't need to become a new person overnight. What you need is a new relationship with your old patterns. Carl Jung didn't promise easy answers. He promised liberation for those willing to do the inner work. And he was clear. You cannot overcome what you refuse to understand. So let's get honest, deeply, painfully honest. Look back at your last failure. Was it really about time, energy, resources? Or was it that subtle fear that if you gave your all, people might see you differently? That your success might cost you relationships, freedom, or even your identity? The shadow doesn't just block failure, it blocks success. Because success is change, and change is dangerous to the part of you that was built to survive, not thrive. This is why so many people live stuck in a loop of half starts and full stops. They want transformation, but their inner world is running on survival scripts from years ago. Scripts like, don't get too confident, don't outshine others, play it safe, keep the peace. And here's the most overlooked truth. Every pattern, even the destructive ones, gives you something in return. Staying quiet protects you from judgment. Delaying protects you from responsibility. Procrastinating gives you relief, even if it's temporary. Until you name what the shadow gives you, you'll never stop accepting its offer. So let's break the cycle. Tonight, not tomorrow, not when life settles down. Tonight, step one, name your shadow. What exactly does your resistance sound like? What is it protecting you from? Write it down. Be brutally honest. No judgment, just truth. Step two, choose one single action, something so small it feels laughable. A text, a 5-minute walk, writing 3 sentences. Not because small actions are easy, but because your shadow doesn't know how to fight them. Step three, do it today. Yes, even with the fear. especially with the fear, because every time you act in spite of resistance, you chip away at the illusion that fear is in control. You're not trying to win a battle in one strike. You're building evidence that change is safe, that your future doesn't have to feel like a threat, that you're stronger than your shadow ever let you believe. And something magical happens here. Something Jung understood better than most psychologists ever have. When the unconscious becomes conscious, it loses its power. Suddenly, the tiredness fades. The excuses feel empty. You see through the ball, and for the first time, instead of fighting yourself, you begin to walk with yourself. That's the power of alignment. Not force, not shame, just honest action, taken by someone who finally knows why they were stuck. In the next section, I'll show you how to repeat this process so it becomes second nature. So your shadow no longer steers your life from the dark, and your ambition becomes more than just a dream. Let's get real for a moment. You don't need another breakthrough. You need consistency. Quiet, gritty, unsexy consistency. The kind of repetition that turns ideas into identity. Because understanding your shadow is not the same as rewiring your life. This is where most people fall off. They journal once. They reflect for a day or two. Maybe even take a small action. And then, the shadow creeps back in, whispering, "See, it didn't work. You're still the same. Why bother?" But here's what Jung would say. The shadow never disappears, but when you know its voice, it loses the power to decide. You don't get to silence the shadow forever, but you can learn how to walk through its noise and still move forward. That's the goal now. Not just awareness, not even motivation, but momentum. And momentum is built by habitual, conscious action. So here's your blueprint, simple but rare, because most won't do it long enough to feel the shift. Step 1, create a daily shadow check-in. Every night, not just when you feel like it, but every night, ask yourself, did I take the action I promised myself? What resistance did I feel today? What excuse felt the loudest? Write it down. Just a few lines, no filters, no edits. Because what gets tracked gets transformed. When you observe your shadow in real time, it can't sneak around anymore. It shows its patterns. And once you see the pattern, you have choice. Step 2, shrink the battle. Don't try to change everything at once. That's how the shadow traps you, by making the goal so overwhelming that giving up feels inevitable. Instead, win small, over and over. A 3-minute action beats a 3-hour plan. A single-sentence journal beats a perfect paragraph. A quiet walk beats another scroll through fake productivity reels. The key? Do it when the shadow screams the loudest, when it says, "You're tired." It won't matter. Just skip today. That's your cue. That's your invitation. Every time you choose action anyway, the shadow grows quieter. The voice of fear shrinks, and your confidence, the real kind, starts to bloom. Step 3, speak it out loud. Here's what nobody tells you about growth. Shame cannot survive in honesty. When you keep your struggle secret, the shadow thrives. But the moment you share your process, your resistance, your wins, even your screw-ups, something shifts. You step out of isolation. You step into connection. So find someone, a friend, a coach, a stranger online who's also doing the work, and say, "Here's what I'm working on. Here's how I'm showing up. Here's what I'm afraid of." You don't need validation. You need witnessing. Because when someone sees you trying, really trying, it reminds both of you that growth is possible. You're not just building discipline, you're reclaiming authorship over your life. Every small action becomes a vote for your future self. Every moment of awareness is another layer of the shadow exposed. And every conversation you have, even the silent ones with yourself, begins to rewrite the narrative you've been trapped in. You're no longer orbiting your potential, you're becoming it. But we're not done yet. In the final part, I'll give you the ultimate integration, how to keep going when the shadow returns stronger than ever, and how to make your breakthrough permanent. The people who finish this process are the ones who finally stop asking, "Why am I stuck?" and start declaring, "This is who I've chosen to become." You've come further than most people ever will. You didn't click away when it got uncomfortable. You didn't settle for another motivational dopamine hit. You faced the truth, and now you're standing at the threshold of real, irreversible transformation. But before you step through, you need to hear this. Your shadow will come back. It always does. Just when you feel momentum, it will whisper, "You're slipping." Just when you take a leap, it will shout, "You're not ready." Just when you start to shine, it will scream, "This isn't safe." And that's not failure. That's predictable. The shadow doesn't vanish. It evolves. Which means if you want to truly own this new self, you must stop expecting comfort and start building a rhythm that includes resistance as part of the journey. Expect the storm and keep moving anyway, Jung wrote. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You are not your past, not your hesitation, not your inner critic. You are the small, stubborn choice to rise again and again. So here's what separates the few who transform from the many who just understand. They keep the promise. They don't wait for perfect days. They don't give their shadow the microphone. They return to their daily step, their tiny action, their honest self-inquiry, even when it feels pointless, because they have learned something the shadow never wanted them to realize. You don't need to be fearless to be free. You just need to keep showing up, even when you're afraid. They don't fight the shadow. They work with it. Imagine this. Every time your fear shows up, it's not an enemy, it's a signal. A flare going up in your nervous system saying, something big is coming, something new, something real. Use that as your compass. When you feel resistance, it means you're brushing up against the edge of your comfort zone. And that's exactly where transformation lives. They turn tools into identity. By now, you've built a new toolkit. 1, you've named your shadow. 2, you've taken daily conscious actions, no matter how small. 3, you've tracked your patterns honestly. 4, you've spoken your truth, even in whispers. 5, you've returned after setbacks, again and again. But now it's time to go even deeper. Make it who you are, not a habit, not a phase, not a thing you're trying, a new default, a new way of being. Let this process become the new script of your life, one you write on purpose, one line at a time. This is just the beginning. The people who watch videos like this and act on them are rare, but the ones who finish the work, who integrate it into daily life, they become unrecognizable from who they were just months before. Not because they found the secret, but because they finally stopped waiting for permission and gave it to themselves. The world doesn't need more people chasing hype. It needs more people like you, Patrice, honest, awake, grounded, and moving. So here's your final invitation. In the comments, share your truth. Tell us what your shadow has been whispering. Tell us what your next small action will be. Encourage someone else who's walking the same path. Let this be the space where honesty becomes power, where vulnerability becomes strength, where the process becomes real. Because this isn't just a video, it's a declaration. You are no longer stuck, you are becoming. And this is your first day forward. If you want more stories like this, deep dives with real psychological power, not just surface-level advice, hit subscribe. But more importantly, live what you just heard. Your new story starts now.